everybody. Good evening and welcome to our event with the wonderful Glenda Young. Can I just ask everybody to switch their cameras and their microphones off? That would be great. And if you also want to put Zoom on to speaker view, then you'll see Glenda's wonderful face instead of loads of little pictures of nobody. If you want to ask a question, if you can just type it in the chat facility and then we can ask Glenda at the end, and that would be brilliant. So, Glenda, good evening. And
hello, everyone.
We'll just start by asking you, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you discovered you wanted to be a writer?
Oh, well, so I'm Glenda Young, and thank you everyone for joining me this evening. I've always wanted to write ever since I was a little girl. I used to love writing stories and poems and songs, just anything, bits of prose. And then I'd always write them down somewhere in a notepad and then put it in the back of my knicker drawer and forget all about it. And then at school I was really good at English, but the teachers were very encouraging. But I came from the sort of background in the sort of home where we didn't have books in the house. I think my mum had the B-roll cookbook, and that was probably the only book that we had in the house. So I spent a lot of time in libraries, and because this is National Libraries Week, I should mention that I probably wouldn't be here tonight speaking to you all, and I wouldn't be a published author without my regular Saturday morning visits to the library in Ryab, which is long gone now. I've always loved books. I'm a voracious reader. I still am. I think if there's one downside to becoming a writer, and I know I probably shouldn't complain, it's just that I don't have enough time to read as much as I'd like to, although I make the most of it in between books. So I've always loved writing, always, but coming from council estate and a working class village, didn't have any idea how to get published, no idea. I grew up in the 1970s, and then into the 1980s, I started work, got a job in various universities, and really enjoyed my work. Worked for some amazing people, especially down in London, but I always had this burning desire to write. Now, I'm a huge Coronation Street fan. So when I got on the internet, first of all, in 1999, it was a long time ago now, I started writing Coronation Street updates for fans all around the world to tell them what was going on in the UK. And ITV got wind of this. And through that very tenuous connection just over the internet, ITV asked me to update a couple of the official books. So I was like, as a fan, that was incredible. I was a Coronation Street fan, I was writing for fans, but most important of all, I was writing and getting paid for it. But all the time I was still working in the university. And then a few years ago, when the actress Anne Kirkbride died and she played Deirdre Barlow in Coronation Street, it was really obviously very bittersweet, but ITV asked me to write the official tribute book to the character of Deirdre Barlow. I've got it here. So this is when things really took off. This is a hardback book, Deirdre, The Life on Coronation Street, 40,000 words that I never thought I could ever do. And ITV asked me especially to write the book. So it was kind of my love letter to Coronation Street. And I knew then that I wanted nothing more. There could be no going back from this. I knew I had to write for a living. Finally, and I was in my 50s by this time. So all the time that I was writing the Deirdre book and the other books for ITV for Coronation Street, I always had it in my mind that I wanted to create my own fiction with my own really strong women. But I knew it couldn't be anything like Coronation Street. It had to be something of my own. So I started sending short stories off to women's magazines, and I thought, well, I'll see if I can do it. And short stories, maybe 1,000 or 2,000 words long. See if I can create a story arc and some really strong women. And to my absolute surprise, the first story that I ever sent to the People's Friend magazine was accepted. And the People's Friend magazine is the world's longest running women's magazine. It's a real powerhouse of the magazine. It's incredible, actually. If you think it's only for old ladies who live in Scotland and have got tartan blankets over their knees, put that notion out of your head completely. I was invited by the People's Friend magazine on a weekend to sort of meet the readers, and it was incredible. I was absolutely blown away. I spent some time with some amazing ladies, retired head teachers. There was an international HR consultant. It was just incredible women. And I'm sure there were some old ladies with tartan blankets over their knees as well. But so the People's Friend started taking my short stories as well as my weekly and Take a Break, and I knew there were all different markets, and I was writing different genres for different magazines. And then the People's Friend magazine said, look, we've Googled you, and we know that you've written books about Coronation Street, and we love the short stories that you're sending in. How would you feel about writing the first ever weekly soap opera for us? I was kind of panicked. I thought, I don't know if I can commit to once a week. And I thought, well, if I want to be a writer, this is what I'm going to have to do. So I thought about it for a few days, and I thought, this is a once in a lifetime opportunity. I'm not going to turn this down. So it's actually 5 years this month that my soap opera, which is called Riverside, has been in the magazine every single week. It's not historical like my novels. It's contemporary, and it's a lot of fun. And I sit down to write it every Wednesday afternoon, and I can honestly say it remains the highlight of my writing week. So I just lose myself with this community of characters that I've created. So after I've been writing Riverside for about a year, and short stories that were getting accepted in women's magazines, and I was submitting to writing competitions and getting placed and winning, I thought, well, I'm going to try for something else now. So I bundled up a whole year's worth of Riverside and sent them to some agents in London. And I said, look, because this was with the permission of the People's Friend, I said, look, this is going to make a fantastic novel, Riverside, the novel. So I sent it off to all these agents saying, guys, make a fantastic novel. And they all sent it back saying, no, it won't. Because you've got a cliffhanger at the end of every page on Riverside. I always leave the reader with a cliffhanger, so that they're dying to know what's going to happen next week. And all of the agents said, that's not what a novel's about. Yes, you can have cliffhangers at the end of chapters, but not every 1,000 words. So, oh, well, at least I've tried. And then one agent got back to me, and she said exactly the same thing. It's not going to work as a novel. She said, but I love the way that you write, and I'd like to meet you, and we can talk and take it from there. So that's how, decades after my dream of being a writer when I was a little girl, that's how it came true. Somebody, this agent in London called Caroline Sheldon, she took me on. She signed me up. I'm on her books. I've been with her ever since, and she is amazing. Together we worked on a synopsis for my debut novel, Belle at the Backstreets, about a young girl who takes on her dad's rag and bone round. And Caroline said, if you write the first 5 chapters, I'll sell it. And that really took me back. So I did. I wrote 5 chapters, introduced Meg and the rag and bone round and the horse and all of the characters. And to her word, she sold the book before I'd even finished it, before I even knew how it was going to finish. So the publishers took a big chance on the story as well. But I guess they saw enough in those 5 chapters to know that it was worth investing in me. Not only did my agent sell the book, she had 3 publishers fighting over it. And I'm still overwhelmed by all of this, even after all, in the last maybe 5 or 6 years, all this has happened, and it's just crazy. Good crazy. So she got me a 3-book deal with, I chose Headline in the end, and then a second 3-book deal, so you can see 6 books behind me on the banner. All of the books are set in Rye, the village where I was born and bred. It's an old coal mining community and farming community. They're all set at the end of the First World War, and the books are standalone, so you can read them in any order. Although if you do read them, you might recognise a couple of the background characters, but they're not a series. And then, so there were 6 books. The Miner's Lass is the new one that's coming out at the end of this month. And there's at least another 2 sagas coming. I can't say too much about them because my publisher will wrap my knuckles. So there's at least 2 more sagas coming, and there are more books in a completely different genre coming as well with Headline, but I'll talk about those later. So that's how I've got, that's why and how I'm sitting here now, very proud to be announcing that The Miner's Lass is officially launched. Way! If you see that this is the hardback, and if you see the paperback when it comes out, or you might have seen pictures online, you'll see it's got a different cover. I know, a little bit behind the scenes gossip about why they changed the cover. Apparently, because this book's gone into supermarkets, apparently hats don't sell on books in supermarkets. So they've taken the hat off the girl. She looks a bit dour and a bit frowny, and that's because poor girl, I really put her through the mill. So in the paperback, she's got no hat on, she's smiling, and she's not in black anymore. She's wearing this very pale pink pinafore. I can't say I've got a favourite cover because the somber tone of the hardback with the hat really suits the mood of the book, I think, because it's quite dark in places. But I do like the paperback because it's nice and smiley and it's colourful. So yeah, so that's where I am now. I'm writing between two genres, sagas and a new genre of cozy crime, and absolutely loving it. And the little girl in me who used to sit at home and write short stories in my bed on a night time, still can't believe it that I'm here now talking to people on Zoom about another saga that's coming out. It's amazing.
That's a lovely road to publication, because quite often we talk to authors and they've had rejection after rejection after rejection, but yours just sounds lovely and smooth, and though it all flowed and all went together, which is great. So from the initial concept and the initial idea of a book, how long does it take to actually get it published?
I think, well, once I signed with Headline, that's when it puts the fear in you, because they want 2 books a year, so 6 months, 6 months to research and write it. So then you've got no choice but to sit down and just crack on with the work. But so 6 months to research and then write it, and then to actually get it into the shops, I would say it's probably about a year, maybe more. For instance, I've just earlier this year, maybe March or April this year, I've just finished writing a saga that's not coming out until next Christmas 2022. So sometimes it's longer than a year, but it's usually a year. And you know what the strange thing is, because The Miner's Lass is coming out in paperback at the end of this month, it was so long ago since I wrote it that I've had to reread it to remind myself what the story was, because since I've written The Miner's Lass, I've written one more saga and 2 cozy crimes. So I just forget what I've written. And it's wonderful going back, and sounds a bit fancy, but I'm actually enjoying the book, enjoying reading my own work, which is, I suppose, is really good.
I'm not surprised, and with that sort of distance between writing it and publication, you must get confused with the characters and get them confused, like muddled up and things.
Yes, so well, because the heroines of each book are very specific, I kind of don't get mixed up with the heroines or their stories, but yeah, sometimes the background incidents, I get, which book did I put that in? I've got a soup kitchen now. Which book did I put the soup kitchen in? Or the miners' strike. So a little bit, major things that I sometimes do get muddled up with. But yes, so there's always a distance. When the book is ready to launch, I do have to go back and read it.
I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised. So how much free rein do you have to develop your ideas, or is there an awful lot of input from your publicist and the publisher?
I do get an awful lot of free rein, I must admit. When you're writing in a particular genre, like the sagas, there are certain rules that you need, not rules, but you do follow the genre. You do follow, I keep wanting to say rules, and it's not rules because you can bend them a bit. There's a framework of what's expected within each genre, I suppose, like a crime novel, there must be a crime. With a saga, there's got to be family upheavals, and especially it's got to have a young, strong woman at the core. So once you know what the book actually needs, then you can just, you've got free rein then. But I always write up a synopsis of what's going to happen in the book from start to finish, just on one A4 sheet, and get it signed off by the publisher first, just in case there's anything in there that they don't want. For instance, when I wrote Pearl of Pit Lane, which is about a young girl who tries to escape a life of prostitution, I wanted to include a serial killer in there as well, and the publisher said no, because then it would be a crime book. So I had to stick with the saga. So that there's a lot of menace in Pearl of Pit Lane, where you've got this strange man who keeps following Pearl and turning up, and you think he's a complete baddie. And I don't want to give too many spoilers away in case somebody wants to read this book, but there's a lot more to this man than being a baddie. But there's obviously no serial killer in the book now. So yeah, so it was a learning curve. Yeah.
Is there anything your publishers ever wanted you to take out, but you've been adamant that it was an integral part of the story?
Take out? I don't think so. I don't. Oh, the only thing that right at the start, right at the very beginning, when I did Belle of the Backstreets, there was there was a scene where I can't remember exactly what happened, to be honest, because it was so long ago. But somebody says, "If you do that, I'll bare my backside in the co-op window." And they didn't get it because they're from London, and they just didn't really understand that kind of northern or northeast humour. And they wanted me to take it out, and I said, "No, I'm not. I'm leaving it in," and so that's fine. You can. I learned. I was very naive when I started, and I suppose I still am. But I have learned that if you push back and you give them a good enough reason to keep things in, or to take something out, then they'll listen to you, because at the end of the day, it's it's come out of my head. It's my idea. It's my book, and the editor that I work with at Headline is quite wonderful. She is very supportive, and every book that I work on her with, I learn something new, which is amazing. Yeah.
That's really nice. You've got that relationship. Have you been with your editor since book one?
Yes, it's the same editor.
Oh,
she's absolutely brilliant. Pauline, I've just noticed I'm going a bit dark on this, and I'm just going to open a blind to see if it brings some light in. Is that a bit better?
Oh, that's better. Yeah. Woohoo! I can see you now.
Yes, I've had the same editor ever since the beginning. And what I do now when I'm writing, I lose myself completely in it. But there's a little bit of my brain she's called Kate, my editor, and I'm just thinking, right, okay, when I'm doing this powerful scene, I know that Kate's going to ask for a bit more emotion or a bit more explanation. Or if I have a character, if there's some action that a character does, then I know I'm thinking, oh, Kate's going to be wanting me to explain why that character's doing what they're doing. So I'm not self-editing, I suppose, as I'm writing, but it's just it's just adding a little extra to the writing process. So I can almost second guess what she's going to say. So I've got her in my head, if you like, it's good. It's a really good discipline to have, I think.
Oh, definitely, I agree with you. And then there's less to change at the end as well, isn't it? If you're sort of developing that as you're going yourself.
Yeah.
So sorry, go on.
No. Go on. I was just going to say that when I finish a manuscript, when I actually finish it and I sit back in the chair and think, I'm going to have a big glass of wine tonight, and I type the end, and then I print it out and send it off to the publisher. It's not the end, and it's never the end. I found a quote when I did Belle of the Backstreets, a quote in a writing magazine, and it just said something like, you think you're finished, you hit send it off to your publisher, then it comes back and you have to grit your teeth and get on with it. And that's it. That's all you have to do. It's a job of work. Just grit your teeth, get on with it, and do what they ask. And if it's anything you don't like, just push back.
Definitely, and that's part and parcel of being an author, isn't it?
Yeah.
So from your books, it's clear that you do a vast amount of research. How do you go about your research? Where do you do your research, and what sort of resources do you use?
Yeah. Do you know what? The one thing I've learned lots of things, but I've learned mainly about me in the course of all of this is that I just love doing the research. I never thought I'd enjoy it so much. And if the writing career ended up going nowhere and I didn't get another contract, I'd probably start working in archives or something like that as a researcher, because I absolutely adore it. I love learning. So Sunderland Antiquarian Society, Ryhope Heritage Society, I always go for a walk around Ryhope, and I'll trail my fingers along old walls, and I'll try to imagine that I'm walking the streets in my heroine's shoes, and I'm thinking, what would she be walking down this street for? Where would she be going? And try to imagine what it might have looked like and smelled like 100 years ago. And some things don't change. The beach, for instance, that's pretty much as it was with the cliffs. There's still some very old buildings in the village. So you can get a really good sense when you go for a walk. And I always spend a day at Beamish, whether that's behind the scenes in the resource centre, because they've got some incredible artefacts that they don't have on show to the public, and you can have access to various things for research. But most importantly, again, it's going for that walk around Beamish, because they've got the pit fires going, the coal fires, so you've got the cold smell in the air. There's hardly anywhere else, and you can get that now. So, and it's the cinder path underfoot, it's the crunching noise. So it's all of these things, all of the senses. When I when I was researching the Miner's Lass, the whole book came about because I looked at a really old map of Riot, and there was a pub called the Tall Bar, which features in the book. It's long gone now, it's been demolished. But on the map behind the Tall Bar, there's a patch of ground, and it said the Sand Pit. I thought that's a strange old thing to be putting on a map. So I asked on Sunderland Antiquarian Society about it, and they said it was waste ground, and bare knuckle fighting took place there. And there was so much blood spilled in the bare knuckle fights that it was nicknamed the Blood Pit rather than the Sand Pit. So that was it. Once I had the Blood Pit in my head, I was thinking, in a bare knuckle fight, I was thinking, well, who are these men that are fighting, and what are they fighting for, or who are they fighting over? And that's when the character of Ruby Dinsdale, who is the Miner's Lass, that's when she came to mind. And I thought, right, okay, this girl is going to be who these two men are fighting for. And that was it. That's how I started writing the book. I didn't know why they'd be fighting, but just that they would be over Ruby. So yeah, and just archives for the rest of the research, local study centres, and obviously libraries. The other thing was that researching the Miner's Lass, it was all supposed to happen during lockdown. I'd compiled this list of places and people I was going to go and see and talk to. This was February last year, and of course, because of lockdown, everything got cancelled. So I had to cancel all my visits to Durham Archives and Tyne and Weir Archives, and didn't get a date Beamish until right at the end when they reopened. So I went online for a lot of my research for the first time, actually. I'd always pretty much shunned online research because I thought there's just too much and I'll get a bit lost. But because of lockdown, it really made me focus in on the websites that were really helpful. And that's going to stand me in good stead for future novels as well. I signed up with the British Newspaper Archive. So all of these things had a cost, but because I had no other choice, I had to do it. And actually for the Miner's Lass, it was really good because I wanted Ruby. The book starts where she's looking for a job in the local newspaper. So I actually looked through the British Newspaper Archive for the old Sunderland Echo of that time to see what jobs were available for girls. So when right at the start of the book, when Ruby's reading the paper, she's reading out job adverts to her mum, like, listen, mum, what about this one? They are actually job adverts from the time, which was great. Just love it. Love all that stuff. Yeah.
It's great, and I agree with Beamish. It gives you such a sense of sort of history when you're walking around. It's absolutely fabulous, especially at Christmas night. Really good.
Absolutely.
Love those. So you've told us a little bit and teased us a little bit with the Miner's Lass. Can you tell us a little bit more and maybe do a reading from the book?
Yeah. Well, Ruby Dinsdale is my most innocent heroine, I'd say. They're all young girls, sort of like around 15, 16, 17 years old. Ruby's 17 at the start of the book. She's pretty useless. She can't cook. She gets things wrong, and she's at the start of the book. She's just been sacked from a job because of a coin called the Barmaid's Dilemma. And I found out about this coin at Beamish. The Barmaid's Dilemma was a 4-shilling coin, and there was a 5-shilling coin at the time. So sometimes men used to give usually barmaids, this 4-shilling coin that looked a lot like the 5-shilling, so they'd get an extra shilling back in change. And it duped a lot of inexperienced barmaids, and it certainly dupes Ruby, so she's been sacked. So the book opens when she's looking for another job. There's a lot of themes of, well, it's family love more than anything else. Her dad's a miner. Her younger brother is just about to go and start working underground at the mine. So it's all about Ruby and her mum who are looking after the miners, and what pit village and pit women, what their lives were like looking after the miners, because everything revolved around the men, everything. And the coal fire was, everything. The coal fire was life to them. They cooked on it. It was used for warmth, and it was used obviously for heating the water up to get to wash the miners as well when they came in from work. The pithead baths in Riot didn't open until the 1930s, so at the time of the book, the water's boiling constantly for the men to come in. The tin bath plays a huge part in this book. There's quite a saucy scene with a miner in the bath. There's some dangerous scenes as well. And the tin baths get pulled into use during a soup kitchen when the miners go on strike in 1921. So they needed something to put the soup in, and they used the baths. So I'm just going to read very briefly from the start of the book when Ruby is looking for a job. She's with her mum. Her mum's called Mary. Oh, I've gone dark again. Sorry, Pauline. I'm going to try and put a light on and see what happens. Just excuse me one moment. Is that a bit better?
Yay! Much better.
Right. So Ruby's sitting in front of the fire with her mum, Mary, and her younger brother, Michael. And they're a very close family. So they kind of, there's a lot of joshing going on and a lot of sort of play acting. And there's a lot of love in this family. So which makes what does happen to Ruby eventually all the more harrowing. But I won't go into too much detail. I don't want to give too many spoilers away. So it's a very quick reading. And it's where the book really starts. July 1919. Ruby ran her finger down the jobs vacant column in the Sunderland Echo. What about this one, ma'am? It says, girl wanted for housework, must have good character. Where's it at? Mary replied. One of the big houses in the village, Ruby said excitedly, but then her voice sank as she read on. From all old enough, it says girls who apply should be aged at least 18. Well, you will be in 3 months, Mary said. You haven't got a good character, though, Michael piped up. Ruby ignored her brother's taunt and carried on with her search. Michael returned to the adventure comic he was reading, and it caught Mary's eye. Where did you get the money to buy that? She asked. Michael pulled the comic up to shield himself from his mum's question. Michael, Mary demanded, if I find out you've been wasting money when we barely have enough to buy food, I'll give you what for. I got it off Bobby at work. He gives it to me once he's read it. Mary knew she shouldn't deny her bairn's pleasure, even if it was just a comic. But the truth was that her family needed every penny they could get. Here's a good one, ma'am, Ruby said. General serving girl wanted. Cleaning and cooking for small family. Wages £8 a week. £8 a week? Mary cried. Why, that's a small fortune. Ruby held the paper up and Mary peered at the ad. Oh, the job's at Riot Hall, she said. Well, there's a problem, as you know only too well. Cooking, Ruby? The amount of times I've tried to teach you to cook, but you should be able to do it by now. Nothing Ruby cooked came out right, no matter how hard she tried. She might have inherited her mum's fair skin and bright eyes, but she'd missed out on her ability in the kitchen. Even under Mary's expert guidance, when Ruby baked bread, it came out of the oven unrisen. Her pastry was too hard, and she didn't think her mum would ever forgive her when she boiled a pan of potatoes dry. She's bloody useless, our Ruby, Michael quipped. Hey, we'll have less of your swearing, thank you very much, Mary said. She whipped a cloth from the kitchen table and flicked it at Michael's head. Ow! He yelled. What are you shouting for, lad? It never touched you. Michael put his hand to his brow and swooned in an overly theatrical fashion. I'm dying, ma'am. You've killed us. You daft lump. I will flame and kill you if you don't get off your backside and go and fetch water for your dad's bath. He'll be home from the pit soon, and bring the bath in from the yard. So that's just a tiny little scene, just to show you the kind of the life that the Dinsdales live. It's all set in the kitchen. It's all set around the coal fire, but there's a lot of things that happen. It's dead hard trying to talk about your book without giving spoilers away. Ruby, like I say, she's very innocent. She finds a romance magazine that someone's dropped on the street, and she takes it home, and she thinks that's how life's going to pan out, and of course it's not. So it hits her all the more when love doesn't go her way, shall we say, and her two best friends, Amelia and Jane, turn out not to be as friendly as she thought. It's awful. I put my girls through some really awful storylines, but at the end of the book, there's a bare knuckle fight at the blood pit, and she's got two men fighting over her. So you'll have to wait and see who wins, and then what happens, and whether she has a happy ending or not.
Oh, wow. Sounds absolutely fabulous. So all of your books have got strong female characters. Why have you chosen to have a strong female character in every book? Was that a conscious decision, or did that just develop?
No, that was absolutely conscious. Again, I think more than anything, it comes from my love of soap operas, of Coronation Street, where you have these really strong women in matriarchal soaps, and these are the women in the Pit Village. Did have to be tough, you know. They had a lot going on, had to look after their homes. You know, they weren't going out to work on the whole, and the ones who had been out to work during World War One were forced back into the home when the soldiers came back. So these were really, really strong, tough women, physically and mentally, and I just love doing that with my heroines, because then you can chuck all sorts of really strong storylines, really juicy storylines at them, and see if they'll cope. They usually do.
That women will cope with everything, Glenda. So we've talked a little bit about the Miners' Lass, but you've got a new book out as well, Murder at the Seaview Hotel. So can you tell us how that one came about and a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I'm writing in a different genre as well as the sagas. I'm now published by Headline in a different genre of cozy crime. So this is a whole new genre to me. During lockdown last year, I had so much time on my hands. So I'd finished writing The Miners' Lass, and I wasn't due to start writing saga number 7 for at least another 7 or 8 months. And I thought, well, what can I do in the meantime? And I'd always had it in the back of my mind that I wanted to write a comedy novel, possibly set in Scarborough, because I love the place. And I thought, well, you know, I've got this time, let's give it a go, see if I can do it. So I wrote a synopsis and sent it to my agent, and she said, yeah, go for it. And the upshot of it is that we've got Murder at the Seaview Hotel, which is, again, hardback. And it's the first of 3 cozy crimes that I'm writing for Headline. Murder at the Seaview Hotel is set in Scarborough, and it stars 12 Elvis impersonators called 12vis, and one of them gets killed, and his blue suede shoes are stolen. And it's the landlady of the Seaview Hotel and her rescue dog. She's got a rescue greyhound called Suki. They are the sleuths. Helen Dexter is the landlady of the hotel, and she becomes the amateur sleuth who finds who killed the missing Elvis. It was an absolute joy to write. I'm not particularly an Elvis fan, but I think everybody has heard of Elvis, and most people can imagine an Elvis impersonator as well. So there are 45 chapters in the book, and I created a Spotify playlist where there's an Elvis song that matches what's happening in the chapter. So the first song is Heartbreak Hotel, and then it goes all the way through. There's a bit of romance in there as well as murder. Also, the Seaview Hotel, when it first starts, is on the brink of closure, and the landlady, Helen Dexter, her husband's just died after a long illness, and she's at a crossroads. She doesn't know whether to sell up and move out or to stay. And as she's wondering this, she gets a phone call from Elvis One of the 12, and she takes that as a sign to stay for now, to see how it goes. And of course, while these 12 Elvis impersonators are staying with her, one of them gets killed. So the Seaview Hotel's in the news. She's got all of this to deal with. So it's about, again, it's bringing the strong female heroine of the book, of the sagas. It's bringing that to a contemporary cozy crime. If anyone doesn't know what cozy crime is, if you think of sort of Murder, She Wrote with Angela Lansbury, or even sort of Agatha Christie's, it's not gory at all. Nothing that will offend or upset anybody in there, but there is a murder. There is something to be solved, and hopefully takes the reader on a bit of a mystery journey, and they can, you know, act as a whodunit and see if they can figure out who's killed Elvis. But yeah, I love it, absolutely love it. And it's out in ebook and hardback now, and it comes out in paperback on November the 11th. So I've got a lot going on at the minute: sagas, cozy crimes, Riverside. Yeah, so
You definitely have. I'm desperate to read it, and I had my copy on my desk at work. Somebody borrowed it when I wasn't there. It's like, bring me book back. I need to read it. So I can't wait. It sounds absolutely fabulous. But you've just said yourself, you've got sagas going on, you've got your cozy crime, you've got Riverside. How do you balance it all now that we're not in lockdown anymore and the world's opened up and all the normal pressures are back?
yeah, it's the writing is fine, because I've got, you know, 6 months to do a saga, then I'll have a rest for a couple of months, and then it's 6 months to do a cozy crime. So the writing schedule is fine. I'm on top of all of that, and I'm usually kind of ahead of myself. It's everything else that's going on, and obviously as a writer I'm self-employed, so there's a lot of admin to do. That can be tricky, and I think sometimes when you're writing a book, and then you might be editing another one at the same time, and you've got publicity to do for something else, that oh, my head's like, at the moment my head's spinning. But so I've made it easy on myself. I'm not even going to start researching saga number 8 until maybe the end of November, December. So I'm giving myself a really nice rest. But Wednesday afternoons, every single Wednesday afternoon without fail, I don't put anything in the diary at all, ever, because that's for Riverside. That's for sitting down to write Riverside, and it's just a joy. It's like putting on a really comfortable pair of slippers when I write Riverside. Love it.
Do you think you'll ever try again to develop the characters into a novel? I mean, obviously not with the cliffhanger at the end, but just take some of it and work it into a novel.
I don't think so, because everything that I've done with Riverside, I didn't realize this while I was doing it, but it's been a real learning curve, and I've learned how to structure story arcs every week in that 1,000 words. So it starts off here, we resolve what happened last week, we get rid of the cliffhanger, then I leave the reader with another cliffhanger. So it's all of that experience has gone into, well, the sagas, and also the cozy crimes as well. So I don't think I would, but something is happening with Riverside. I'm not allowed to say what it is yet, but something else, not a book, is going to be happening with Riverside in the next
week. Watch this space. Watch this space. Yeah. I've got a couple of more questions for you, Glenda, but our lovely audience, and we've got Anne, Beth and Hilda and Michelle tonight. We're a very select audience, but if you would like to ask any questions, please feel, I can't get my words out. Please feel free and just type them in the chat, because I know Glenda she's sick of talking to me. She'd like someone else. So if you have anything, please do type it in and I'll put those to Glenda. So can we talk a little bit about you as a reader? Because obviously being an author.
Oh yeah.
Reader as well. So what do you like to read? What's your favourite?
I love, well, Margaret Atwood is my favourite author. I've read everything that she's ever written, and she's the sort of writer that when I'm reading her, I sometimes pause on the page just to kind of, oh wow, just to take it in. So she's my favourite, and the reason I'm sort of sitting here faffing is because I love reading autobiographies. There's Shirley Ballett's from Strictly Come Dancing. I've just finished this. I love reading autobiographies, especially of women, and especially women in the public eye in the media. I've just got a fascination with all that behind the scenes. So I've just finished reading that. I've got John Cooper Clarke's, he's the punk poet from Salford, to read next when I get some time. The Phone Box at the End of the World. I can't see the, I have to put my glasses on to see the author's name. Hang on. Laura Imai Messina. Apparently it's lovely. My husband's just finished reading it, so I'm going to read that. And then what's next on my reading list is basically research for saga number 8. And I've got this wonderful book, because as part of the book, part of the saga, it's going to be around old wives' tales and remedies, natural remedies and things like that. So I bought this book from eBay from 1931, this book is, and it's called How to Live to 100 Years. And the fella on the front smoking a pipe. But it's all about natural remedies, herbal hints and remedies. So this is going to be an integral part. And I'm thinking, spoiler alert, I'm thinking maybe one of these remedies might not work, or it might go wrong, and might have to kill someone off. We'll see. That's just a thought. So that's what I'm going to be reading. For all of my sagas, I always read the same book every single time. I know this book almost back to front. It's called Pit Women by a lady called Griselda Carr. It's an academic book from studies from the women who live in pit villages, especially during the miners' strikes. And these are like turn of the century. It's amazing, absolutely incredible. I love this book, so I'll reread that again. I've also got Gimbel's illustrated 1915 fashion catalogue, so that will go into my research. And I love the sound of this one. I buy these all from eBay. Tough Times, Strong Women. So, and again, this is probably more kind of around World War II-ish, and my books are set a lot earlier, but it'll give me ideas to include. So I might not be able to include the exact same information that's in the books, but it'll inspire me to pick up some stories. So that's my reading to-do list for the next few months.
I've got the phone book at the edge of the world on mine as well. That because it does look really interesting. So we'll compare notes next time we talk, see what we think about it. Right, we've got a couple of questions. Definitely put my teeth out, haven't I? Questions from the audience. So from Bethan, how are the covers for your books chosen? I've just finished reading Murder at the Seaview Hotel and I thoroughly enjoyed it. Or you're just rubbing it in, Bethan, because I haven't got my copy yet.
I don't have any say at all in the covers, none whatsoever. It's all to do with marketing. Like for instance, the Miner's Last paperback being changed with no hat. It's all to do with marketing, what the genre, what will fit the genre. But I will tell you a little secret. When I first wrote Belle of the Backstreets and The Took Me Child, I hadn't seen the covers until I'd actually finished writing the first book. And I was in Waterstone's cafe in Sunderland when the publisher sent the covers through. So I thought, oh, my goodness, I'm going to see my first book covers. So I kind of girded my loins and looked at my phone, and my heart sank. And I thought, these aren't my girls. I'd spent months writing about Meg and Sadie, and I looked at these pictures and thought, they're not my girls. They're not what I had up here. And I walked around town for about an hour, feeling really sad, like on the brink of tears. I thought, they're not my girls. And then, calm down, went back to Waterstones. And Waterstones in Sunderland have got a saga book table. Not all Waterstones do, but Sunderland does. And I held my phone next to the covers on the saga table. And the books on the saga table were pretty girls in flowery dresses with a bunch of flowers and looking a bit sort of wistful. And there's my riot lasses, like, whoa. And I thought, actually, do you know what? These are my girls. I know now what the publisher's done with these strong colours, and these girls are looking right into the camera. So, and I love them now, absolutely love them. But no, I don't have any say. The Cozy Crime, the first one has got the Grand Hotel on it in Scarborough, which wouldn't have been my choice, because if you know Scarborough, you'll know the Grand Hotel isn't that grand anymore. But I know why the publisher's done it, because you look at that and you know it's Scarborough immediately. So I couldn't be happier, honestly. They know what they do. I know what I'm doing writing the story. They know what they're doing with marketing and sales. So I've got no choice.
There's no point stressing about it, is there? There's not a lot you can do. But the covers are fantastic, so they are doing a good job, to be fair.
Yeah, they are very strong.
Another question, this one from Anne. Why all the sagas set around 1919? Is there any special reason for that?
Yeah. The end of the First World War is a time of huge change for British society. they went through all kinds of different changes of culture, jobs, all sorts of things. And it affected women more than anything. And it's that thing again of the soldiers coming back from war and taking the jobs from the women who'd been out working on trams or in ammunition factories and all of those things. And now the women were being forced back into the home. There's lots of change going on. And once I started looking at that period, because I thought, well, this is probably going to be a bit more tricky than writing about World War II, because there's a lot more information available, a lot of research available about World War II kind of era. World War One, not so much. But I just love it. The information that I have been able to find, I've just kind of really fallen in love with that era, not in a romantic way, but just in a how determined everybody was, especially the women. Just how that had to get on with things. No electricity then, of course, no phones. The toilets certainly in Riot, in the coal lanes of coal houses. They had the toilets in the back lane where they used to share them. And again, everything revolved around the fire, the coal. Yeah, so I just love it. It's strange because writing the sagas, I'm cast back to the end of the First World War in this kind of black and white world, and then writing the Cozy Crimes, it's contemporary. So I'm going now between the two. And it's I can't expect. I keep saying it's amazing and I love it, but it's fantastic. And to be looking at, for the sagas, to be looking at old maps, especially, in documents from over 100 years ago, just amazing, absolutely.
Enthusiasm for the genre and the era and everything you do, it absolutely shines when you talk about it. It's just fab. Question from Michelle, you've sort of touched on this one a bit. How do you research your novels when a lot of the buildings or places in your books are no longer there?
Yeah, I do rely a lot on the archives and pictures, especially in Riot. Actually, there are quite a lot of the old farm buildings that are still there in the village, and you can, there is there's a leaflet of an historic walk that you can go on, where there might just be bits of the old wall left or bits of an old building, but it's still there if you know where to look. The old train station in Riot, some of it still exists. And if you go to these places with the actual pictures and you stand in the same sort of angle where the pictures were taken from, it's easy to imagine what it must have been like. So you just build up this picture of what Riot was like. And through Riot Heritage Society, I've been given access to a lot of pictures. They've just been falling over themselves to help, which is wonderful. And the vicar at Riot St Paul's as well. Every time I research a book, I always go and chat to the vicar, who is so helpful, and especially for Pearl of Pit Lane, because when Pearl runs away from the life of prostitution that she doesn't want to be part of, she runs from one side of Riot to the other. So she runs from the colliery side down to the more pastoral farming side, and she spends the night in the church. And I said to the vicar, where would a young girl hide in the church? So he showed me kind of all the hidey holes. And Riot Church has got this really tall bell tower. So he took me up into the bell tower, and I sat behind the bells, like nervously looking at me watch in case they went off at 2:00. But to sit there and these stone steps that were so dusty and it was cold, and it was chalky, and the dust was catching in my throat. All that's in the book because Pearl sits behind the bells and does that. So if there's an inn anywhere, like a church or an old building or a pub in Riot, then I'm in there. And as soon as you tell people, can I come and have a look in your cellar because I'm writing a novel? Come in, pet. Do you want a cup of tea while you're here? It's that sort of. I've had that kind of reaction, and it's just been amazing. I've seen things I've never seen before. And it actually, sorry, I know I'm waffling on, but I'm all excited now. At one talk I gave at Sunderland, a lady came up to me and she said, my family used to run the guidepost in pub at Riot, and did you know there's a stream in the cellar? Well, I was straight into the guidepost. I said, where's this stream in your cellar? And it turns out, I didn't know this, but it turns out that the guy who runs the guideposting. I used to go to school with him, so I got a full tour of the pub. It's just little things like that. You've got to be a bit pushy, which I never was before I started writing. I mean, before I started writing, I wouldn't have even dared do this. So it just goes to show you how words can change lives, my life.
Oh,
Yeah.
definitely has. We haven't got any more questions from the audience. So if I do the last one, it's one I'd like to ask, just a bit of fun. So you're stranded on a desert island. Which 3 books would you take with you, and which author would you take with you? Can be living or dead. I'll
Which
let
author?
you have that.
Oh, crikey. I think I would definitely take The Handmaid's Tale by Margaret Atwood. It's my favourite novel. I read it about 13 times, and I love the TV show as well. I would take that to read again. I really would. I'd probably take, I'm not a huge Harry Potter fan, but I've read them all and I know how clever they are. So I'd probably take one of those to sort of sit down and dissect it, see if I can learn anything from it. A third one, I'd probably take one. This might sound a bit vain, but I'd probably take one of my own.
Go for it, Glenda. Why not?
In case I ever got rescued, and I could say, "This is me."
My book.
But as for taking an author, oh goodness me, oh maybe someone like Stephen Fry. I would maybe, I don't know, because he would be quite fun as well to talk to. Yeah, Richard Osman, because I read his first Cozy Crime, and he's quite fun.
It's really good, the Thursday Murder Club, isn't it? The second one's good, The Man Who Died Twice as well. I would take Bear Grylls with me, to be fair, so he could get us off the desert island. I think I'd do that. But Glenda, as always, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. Hopefully we'll get an in-person event at some stage. Thank you to our wonderful audience for coming along as well. We've got lots and lots on the Words website. There's another Zoom. My brain's gone dead. Author event with Leslie Pierce, and then there's things with Gerard Dickens, and there's lots going on there. And we've got a session on the road to publication with the Northern Crime Syndicate on Saturday as well. So lots going on. Do check out the Words website. But once again, thank you very much, Glenda.
Thank you, Pauline. The people at the Word are always really supportive, so thank you very much indeed. And thank you everybody for coming as well.
It's lovely to talk to you.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
So take care, everyone. Bye.